Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is mindset, and we're actually going to be discussing some mental toughness exercises. So we did a podcast recently on mental toughness, so I should have already looked this stuff up, but you guys are probably used to me now looking it up in the moment. So we had podcast 335 titled Developing Mental Toughness. And as I made that podcast, I realized I really just kind of made the case for the importance or the benefit of being mentally tough. And I probably gave some stories and some background here and there, but I wanted to give some actual specific exercises. And really what brought it to my attention was I'm working with a young athlete right now, and her parents asked me to work with her to build up her ability to push herself when no one else is around. So we're kind of developing mental toughness, and we've talked about different things related to like pain tolerance. So like a distraction technique where like if she's doing something that doesn't have high technical skill to it, or it's highly repetitive and for long duration. So let's say a cross-country race or a marathon, something like that, where there is a skill of how to run correctly, but once you kind of have the skill set in place, you don't have to keep thinking of it over and over again. So in that case, thinking of a way of kind of tolerating the pain where you almost separate yourself from the pain is very helpful. So I had her do an example of where she, as she was doing an exercise in the gym, I had her think of like her parents' kitchen. It was an example she brought up. Otherwise, that would have been very oddly specific for me to think of. But she was thinking of her grandparents' kitchen and kind of thinking about like the items that were in the kitchen, the colors of the countertop versus the floor versus the ceiling versus the walls, and kind of like doing a layout, almost like she was mentally recreating the kitchen. And that was a distraction technique that we used. Then we also explained the importance of hyper-focusing on technique, where sometimes instead of running away from the pain, you almost have to dive deeper into the pain. So this would be for something that's highly technical and typically a shorter duration. So let's say it's like a sprint in swimming, where it's maybe only like, down the length of the pool and back. So where every single stroke makes a huge difference. If you kind of like separate yourself and do a distraction-based technique, you might shortchange your strokes by like a quarter of an inch, or some small degree, and all of a sudden that can cost you the race. So if you're doing something that's highly technical and short duration, distraction is not a good technique. It'll decrease your performance. So instead, what we did on those exercises, it was a different workout, is I had her do like a series of, like, one example was squats. So she was doing bodyweight squats, and she had a touch pattern she had to do with 2 spots on the floor and 2 spots on the wall in front of her. So when she sat down onto like a box, like to do box squats, she sat in the box, had to do a touch pattern on the floor. She stood up, did a touch pattern on the wall, and then she had to kind of do that from rep to rep to rep, touching in a certain pattern. So it made her hyper-focus on the activity she was doing. She couldn't get distracted, but she had to learn how can I get down to very, very precise aspects of the technique, and that almost makes me not be able to notice the pain. So, for example, I put a chalk mark on the wall, and it might be like, okay, are you touching on the top of the chalk mark, the bottom of the chalk mark, slightly to the left, or are you hitting dead center every single rep? And that's something where if you hyper-focus deeper into the technique, that is actually a way of not noticing the pain of something. So we talked about pain tolerance and just her ability to improve pain. Then the other things we've gotten into are what we're going to talk about today is mental toughness exercises. And this is not necessarily specific to pain tolerance. This is like stress tolerance. So like things with self-belief, self-confidence, doubts, anxiety, fears, that kind of stuff. Like making sure we don't defeat ourselves mentally before we even start something physically. So one of the drills we're going to go through, and I'm going to talk about 4 of them today. And if this turns out to be something people are interested in, I can make another podcast and show you even more examples. So the first one we'll look at is understanding what's in our control. Okay, so I want to kind of talk you through this so that way you can kind of do it as we're talking. And then we'll kind of give some examples and stuff afterwards. So for her, she does swimming and she does running. So those are the examples that we've been using. But you can think of it for whatever your sport or activity is. If you don't do a sport, and you're just a general exerciser, okay, and you generally work out, you can just picture something that you used to do. Maybe you can think of a workout you currently do now. Just try to find some type of activity. And what I would have you do is list at least 3 things that are outside of your control, okay, that could potentially negatively impact the event. So, if we think of a swimming race, something that could potentially happen that is outside of like a swimmer's control is when they dive into the water, maybe their goggles pop loose and kind of get pulled down their neck, and all of a sudden they can't see. Well, what do? So that would be an example of something that we can't control. So think of that. Think of something that would be outside of your control. If you think of a running race, maybe it's a very, very, very hot and humid day. And maybe it's really abnormally humid, but that's something you can't control. You still have to show up. You still have to do the race. Okay? So think of the different things. Maybe there's maybe you go to the gym and there's a routine that you have set in place, but the piece of equipment that you want to use is busy. Well, what do? Do you get discouraged? Do you quit? Do you get mad? Do you get frustrated? Do you let that defeat you? Or do you try to overcome it? So, think of 3 things that are outside of your control. Mentally picture each of those 3 things happening. Imagine how it would feel in the situation. What emotions would you feel? Would you feel anger? Would you feel sadness? Would you feel like kind of defeated already? How would you respond? How would you feel? Okay? Think of those. You really actually want to generally stop and think of the emotions. So if it's hot and humid, you're going to get there and you're going to feel, oh man, dang it, anyhow, like I wanted to try to set, a PR and I wanted to do my best, but there's no way I'm going to do my best when it's this damn hot and miserable. So you feel like frustrated. So imagine feeling those kind of feelings. Then you want to imagine yourself letting them go. Imagine saying to yourself, I cannot control this. So, I won't allow it to control me. So if my goggles fly off my face in the swimming pool, okay, I can't control that. But I can control if I try to swim the rest of this race to the best of my damn ability with whatever I got available to me. I can control that. I can control whether I still try. That is always within our control. So if something happens to us, okay, outside of our control, it doesn't do you any good to get frustrated. It doesn't do you any good to get mad or feel defeated or get sad. It doesn't do us any good to allow something outside of our control to control us. We have to immediately let go of those emotions. It's a natural reaction. You will have emotions. But you have to let those emotions go. And you have to, again, remind yourself, this is outside of my control. But I can still control me. I can still control whether I show up and give it my best, regardless of all circumstances. Because even if that event turns out like shit and you do horrible, the worst performance you've ever had, there will be something that you can learn from it. You will have gotten mentally tougher. You would have gotten physically tougher. You would have been challenged in some way, and you can walk away better. But if you let that thing control you, you let it defeat you, you let it get you angry, it gets in the way of you trying your best, and you don't try your best, you just give up ahead of time, there is now nothing you can learn. That moment will be absolutely wasted. Absolutely wasted. But regardless of what happens outside of our control, if we control our efforts, there's still something to be gained from that experience. Even if it's just increased pain tolerance, increased mental toughness. Okay? There's something you can gain when you still try your best. So that's what we want to learn. Is when the things outside of our control happen and we have negative emotions, we have to let those emotions go. we have to remind ourselves, I can't control this, so I won't allow it to control me. Okay? Now, think of 3 things that are within your control that could potentially negatively impact the outcome of the event. You can make a list of those things, like what things can you control? What actions could you put into place, either physically or mentally, to help you be better prepared? Okay? So then what you want to do is think, if there's things I can do, am I doing them? So for example, am I showing up to an event well fed? Have I been well rested? Have I cleared my mind before I even got in the gym or showed up to the event? So how many of us walk through the gym doors and we're still thinking of our to-do list of what we need to do after the workout? And the whole time we're supposed to be working out, we're stressing out about how we're going to fit time in for this. When am I going to do that? Maybe I need to cut my workout short 5 minutes so I can fit this in. We never fully involve ourselves into the moment because we're constantly thinking of the future. How many of us beat ourselves up and we don't embrace the moment because of our past? Oh, I've failed at this before, I'm just going to fail again. Okay? Those are things within our control. Our mental mindset is within our control. Our nutritional habits, our sleep habits, our stress levels, they are within our control. So if you are not controlling the things you can control, you are missing out on being the toughest you can be, on being the best prepared you can be, on being the best outcome, okay, that is possible for you. You will never be your best unless you give it your best. You need to understand that past failures don't mean that you're going to fail in the present. Those were past opportunities to learn. Who you were the last time you failed is not who you are today. You are one event smarter, one event tougher. You are one event more prepared. The old you might have failed, but the new you can succeed. So if there is something within your control, control the shit out of it. Okay? Make it a freaking science. Make it a game. Try to make it something that you 100% dive into. Because there will be things that happen that are outside of your control. You can't do anything about those. But if you take care of the things within your control, it'll build self-belief, it'll build self-confidence, and you'll be better able to shrug off the things that are outside of your control. You show up to that race and it's humid as hell, and you say, hey, you know what? I've kicked my ass in practice every day. Those were miserable. This won't be any more miserable than that. I'm used to this. I got this. I'm going to do it. It builds that confidence, that self-belief. Okay? So learning what's within your control. Think of 3 things that are outside of your control. Imagine the emotions you'll feel. Then imagine yourself letting go of those emotions and saying, I cannot control this, so I won't allow it to control me. Then think of 3 things that are within your control and make damn sure you're controlling them. Put some action towards it, even just a little bit, and that'll help build self-confidence and self-belief. Okay? So, that is our first exercise. Now, if you want, I have a handout for all this stuff. So if you like the idea of this and you're like, man, I want to see this written down, I want to see it in a format that maybe I can really, tangibly hold in my hands and actually try these drills. So shoot us an email, brutalirongym@gmail.com, and we'll send you the handout. Okay? Now, the next thing we have is mantras. Okay? So, what mantras are basically things you will tell yourself. Okay, like kind of like phrases or words that have meaning for you. Okay? So imagine you are faced with an overwhelming challenge, something that scares you, something that makes you question whether or not you'd actually be able to conquer the challenge. Okay? It helps if you think of a few specific scenarios. So maybe you show up to work today and you're already flustered, the day was already full, and somebody says, so-and-so's sick, I'm going to need you to cover for them. And you're like, freaking crap, I had my own stuff to do. Now I'm supposed to do their job on top of my job? And that's definitely something that can be scary for us. That could be something that overwhelms us, causes stress. So there's things even outside of sport, outside of the gym, that this stuff can apply to. So think of a scenario, whether it's in the gym or in life, and what would be words of encouragement you've heard from others in the past? Maybe from some books you've read or movies you've watched. What are some words of encouragement you've heard that could provide you with a sense of calmness? What are words of encouragement that can provide you with a sense of excitement? Maybe a sense of aggression to attack the challenge. So there's sometimes we want calmness in the face of like high stress, high anxiety. Maybe in the face of like a physical challenge, we need aggression. We need to freaking attack that stuff. So we almost had to bring our excitement level up. Rather than other times, if we're super stressed, we need to bring our excitement, our nervous excitement, downward. So can you think of some positive words? Some phrases that might help you feel this way? If you can, write them down. If you can't, then you need to talk to, friends and family. If you're younger, you can talk to your parents. If you have kids of your own, you can ask them. What are some things that they've heard or some movies they've watched that were really motivating? If you have a coach or a trainer, you can ask them for motivational ideas. So there's tons of YouTube videos that I really like that are very motivational. So there's one by Mark Bell that's titled F Your Elbow, and you can understand what F stands for. And it's basically where somebody wrote in a question to him, and they basically just said, if your elbow hurts, like, why don't you just take days off? And, if you're in pain, you need to take time off the gym. And there's some truth to that, but Mark Bell responded with basically the way I like to respond with is, listen, shit's going to happen. Stuff's going to hurt. You're going to have a bad day. You're not going to have the greatest sleep. You're not going to have the greatest food. But F that. You got to show up and you got to do some damn work. Maybe your way of moving forward that day is just doing some stretching, some yoga. Maybe actually you have to plan a nap. It's actually really hard for certain people to take naps in the middle of the day. So they might actually need to discipline themselves to take a 2-hour nap. That sounds insane to some people. But I have had clients where they needed sleep in order for them to become better. And I had to force them to take a nap. And they very much struggled. Especially moms. Okay? Well, how can I take a nap? I'm supposed to do this and this and this for my family and my kids. Well, in order for you to be your best for your sport and to have the energy and the mood and be a good person around your kids, you might need to take that damn nap. So sometimes it's hilarious, but we might be challenged in ways that you might think are kind of contrary. So, for example, if somebody says, I need you to take a 2-hour nap, that might sound amazing to some people. But to some people, that has been one hell of a challenge. Okay? So you want to think to yourself is when you're faced with challenges, what are some things that you can say to yourself, okay, and get you motivated to attack those challenges? So, like I said, Mark Bell's video is an awesome one. Teaches you just to show up and get shit done. There's another one by Eric Thomas on YouTube, and I believe the title is something about, like, as bad as you want to breathe. So you can look for that, Eric Thomas, as bad as you want to breathe. And he talks about wanting something as bad as you would want to breathe. Just like if your breath is taken away from you, if you're drowning underwater, you will do anything and everything to get to the top of that water to get that breath. Well, if you want to be successful in sport or in life, you need to want to be successful as bad as you want to breathe. You need to be willing to do anything and everything to get to the top, to become your best. So those are motivational things that I like a lot, and I've listened to those videos a lot. So you can ask friends, family, you can ask coach. You can even look up, motivational speeches on YouTube. They're free. There's motivational speeches and books and stuff all over, like Amazon or Audible for audiobooks. So you want to try to find stuff that can give you that motivation. And take time to think to yourself of what would you say to someone. That's another thing you can do. Is what would you say to someone who is in this situation you find yourself in? So if they showed up to work and they had to take over for a colleague, what would you tell them? You'll probably say something along the lines of, hey man, just take a breath, okay? List out all the things that need done today. Put them in the order of priority and just start chipping them off one at a time. So you would organize the stress. That might be what you would tell someone else. So damn, you need to tell yourself that. So often we give pretty good advice to other people, but we don't take that advice ourselves. So this is a chance for you to do that. So you want to find words and phrases of encouragement, whether they're encouragement to calm down, encouragement to get excited and be aggressive, and you want to write them down and you want to keep them. Okay? They can be kept in a note on your phone. They can be kept in a piece of paper in your wallet. I've had clients actually tape a note card to the inside of their visor in their car. So when they pull into the gym parking lot, they'll flip the visor down. And one client, for example, I said, I want you to list on a note card the top 5 reasons why you work out every day. Number 1 reason was they wanted to be alive for their kids. So I said, don't come into the gym. I don't even care if you're 10 minutes late. Don't step foot in this gym until you read that list. And you accept the fact that when you walk in this gym, I am going to kick your ass. Because that's what you need to be here for those 5 things. If you want to be here in 10 years for your kids, you want to walk your daughter down the aisle, you better show up freaking ready to work. I don't want you in these doors until you're ready. And when you come in, we're going to freaking kill it. So that person would turn on freaking rock music. They'd be out in the parking lot jamming to the music, reading the card. When they came in like freaking bat out of hell, man. It was crazy. So they came in so fired up, and I'd have to like get all this shit ready in time because they would just be bouncing around. It was awesome, awesome, awesome. But that's what they needed to do, to show up their best every damn day. And it worked great. Okay? So that's what you want to do with these mantras, is think of words and phrases, things of encouragement that you can say to yourself when you're faced with challenges. Okay? So, there's one that I've used recently for myself, and it actually relates to another client I was talking to, and it was, the phrase was something along the lines of, things don't have to be perfect for me to be perfect. And what we meant by that was, stuff might happen. They might be underfed that day. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep. Maybe they're overstressed. Maybe they have, I don't know, their cat shit in their shoe. Whatever the hell happened to you, okay? Is just because things around you aren't perfect doesn't mean that you can't put in your best. So when we said they needed to do perfect, they needed to be perfect, we meant putting in their best. So things don't have to be perfect for me to do perfect. And what that means is I don't give a shit what's going on around me. I'm going to show up and give my best every damn opportunity I have. And that's what we're trying to learn. So that's what that can help with, okay? The next thing we have is identifying strengths and weaknesses outside of event training. So it's common for athletes to address strengths and weaknesses within their sport, okay, within the training aspect of their sport. But not many of them, especially in amateur levels, identify strengths and weaknesses outside of their training. So strength and weaknesses associated with like physical recovery, like nutrition, sleep, anxiety, or stress control. Strength and weaknesses associated with mental preparation, okay, like self-confidence, self-belief. So they might come into the gym and worry about the technique of their squat, but they're not working on the freaking confidence to get under the heavy weight and attack it. So their technique might be shit because they're coming in super stressed and, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this. Well, you're not going to be when you have bullshit attitude like that. If you've been showing up and if you've been training hard and your program says you're ready, then you're freaking ready. Get under the damn bar and try your best. Okay? So you have to fire yourself up in that way. You have to be prepared mentally. You might show up and do the physical training, but you need to be damn sure you're ready mentally. You make sure you're ready with food, sleep, stress, anxiety, all that stuff. Okay? So try to identify 3 things that are outside of your training that maybe you could be doing better to help your performance outcome. Okay? So same thing with work. Maybe you're stressed out at work. Things aren't going well with work. Well, stop looking in work. Maybe by you getting up, hitting the snooze alarm because you hate work, getting up in a rush, not eating anything, not taking time to do anything, just flying out the door. The whole time you're driving to work, you're thinking, I hate work, I hate work, I hate work. This could be another shit day, another shit day, another shit day. Then you show up, and guess what? You hate work, and it's a shit day. Well, damn, you set yourself up for it. What the hell do you think was going to happen when that's what you showed up looking for? If you get up 15 minutes early, maybe you can read something, okay? You can get into a little bit, 10, 15 minutes reading of some kind of maybe an attitude of gratitude type book. Learn to be grateful for the things you have. Maybe you have a shit job, but that shit job gives you a paycheck. And it gives you a chance to kind of visit friends and family. Maybe you can help pay for things for your kids. So you might say to yourself man, I don't really like this job, but I'm super happy I can provide for my kids. And they're able to maybe go on this camping trip in 2 weeks. I'm going to really embrace that camping trip, and I'm going to have fun. I can't wait for that trip. So I'm going into work today. I'm going to deal with whatever shit I got to deal with so that way I can have that time for my family. Then when you show up to work, it's still a shit show. Okay, it's still a bad day, but it's not going to be as miserable as it needs to be, as it would be if you were to show up expecting the misery. Okay? So it makes a big, big difference in your outcome based on how you look at it when you show up, okay? So you have to take care of that kind of stuff. So could you be more consistent with sleep and food? That's going to help a lot. That helps a lot of things. Energy, mood, anxiety, depression, all that stuff. Could you bring a better mental mindset, like we said? So you can show up with just a more positive mindset. That makes a big difference. Think about maybe a bad relationship you have. Maybe there's something happened recently, you got in an argument with somebody, it's making you stressed out. Maybe you need to address that and lower your stress levels. And then all of a sudden your training is going to go better. So anybody that's ever been through a relationship breakup, it's pretty damn hard to kind of focus in on training and have a great workout whenever you feel like one part of your life is falling apart. So those are things that you need to maybe address and see if there's things outside of your training, okay, outside of that one single event you're having issues with. So what are your strengths and weaknesses? If you know that there's 3 things, okay, try to find 3 things, that maybe you could do a better job of approaching them, and that'll help the outcome of the main event, start trying to do so, okay? So we talked in a podcast, I think it was yesterday actually, it was recently, where a lot of times people focus on trying to get more sleep. You can't often get more, but you can focus on a better quality. So doing things that help with quality of sleep is extremely, extremely important. So making sure the room is cool, making sure the room is dark, making sure the room is quiet. Like we said, is making sure we go to bed even hydrated is very helpful. So if you're dehydrated, it lessens the quality of sleep. There's a whole bunch of stuff that factors into sleep, okay? So you can read maybe an article about that, read a book about that. I've read a bunch of books about sleep, and it has helped. I don't sleep amazingly well, but I sleep a hell of a lot better than before I read those books. So putting in some effort to try to educate yourself and do a better approach at these outside things can help the main event thing go better, okay? The last one we have is building confidence from past experiences. So often when we're faced with new challenges and hardships, we can kind of begin to doubt our abilities to overcome that challenge. So we kind of start to question ourselves, and in doing so, we kind of almost start putting limitations on ourselves, and we set ourselves up to fail before we even begin. So one way to fight against that kind of natural reaction is to think of past challenges, past hardships that you were actually able to successfully overcome. So moments when you were tested, but you were actually able to pass the test. And especially at times whenever they almost crushed you or they did crush you. And you had to just grow into it and come back stronger. So think of 3 things in your past that you faced that at the time you thought they were going to break you. At the time you never thought you'd be able to overcome that. Okay? Think of how scared you were at first. What were the emotions you felt when you first were faced with that challenge? They're going to be the same emotions that you'll feel with current challenges. So just because you have those emotions of fear and doubt doesn't mean you're going to fail. You had those emotions of fear and doubt in the moments when you did succeed. So just because you have doubt, just because you have fear, doesn't mean you are a failure. It doesn't mean you're going to fail.